Well, welcome, Brad and Jeff. My name's Josh Barber, and we are coming to you today to talk about our article entitled Analytics and Expert Collaborations, How Individuals Navigate Relationships when Working with Organizational Data. What I thought we would do is first just introduce ourselves and then talk a little bit about the article, and then we're each going to give you one reason why, if we hadn't written the article, we would want to read it. And so, as I said, my name is Josh Barber. I'm a faculty member at the Moody College of Communication at the University of Texas at Austin.
I'm Jeffrey Treem. I'm also a faculty member at the Moody College of Communication at the University of Texas at Austin.
And I'm Brad Kohler, and I'm an executive consultant with a company called Avail Advisors.
Okay, and as you might notice, Brad is joining us via Skype. And Brad, I think that we just had a little hiccup when you said your name. So you're Brad Kohler of Avail Advisors.
Yes, thank you, Josh.
So just a brief, this is our 30-second abstract. You can go and read the full abstract online. But what I would highlight in the piece is it's a study of one organization's efforts to stand up a more enhanced analytics function. They were in the process of trying to take advantage of the really kind of large and substantial analytics function that they had built in to do the work that they were doing as a financial services organization, but they didn't feel like they were able to derive competitive advantage from the data that they had or from the huge community of analytics professionals that were working on their kind of main line of business. In doing this study, we followed folks over the course of a couple of years as they stood this function up, and we identified the sorts of problems that came up as they worked with each other to try and solve analytics problems. We also learned about some of the communication strategies that they used to navigate those difficulties. And we also, one important contribution of this piece to theory was that we found that the strategies that they used and what seemed to work and the nature of those problems varied a little bit depending on the type of relationship that they had with each other, whether they were merely requesting data, whether they were collaborating with each other on some data-driven problem, or whether they were commissioning a study or an analytics project to be done by another unit. So that is the project in a nutshell. And since I've been talking for a while, I'll go last about why I would read it if I hadn't written it. Jeff, why would you read this piece if you weren't one of the co-authors?
Well, one of the things that really attracted me to this project was what the heck is analytics work? And, analytics has become this buzzword, and there is a lot of interest in growing analytics. And it seems to be a given that this is something that organizations should want to do. And it also seems to be a given that we know what analytics work is. And so I always like to take kind of a skeptical eye to a lot of management trends and organizational practices. And so one of the things that really interests me is what is the work of analytics? And I think one of the things that this study really unveils is that the work of analytics is much more than a technical skill set. That when you do analytics work, it differs from traditional domain expertise in that we think of kind of functions in an organization kind of vertically, and analytics work is something that cuts across the organization. And so analytics work is really caught up in a web of social relations. And so when we talk about the expertise of analytics work, certainly there is a technical aspect to it, but really expertise in analytics work also involves expertise in these communication practices, right? And so seeing the work of analytics as beyond dealing with data, but also dealing with people.
Cool beans. When we were putting the piece together, I remember one of the things that you underscored as we were working on it, Jeff, was, if we think about analytics work, organizations have been doing something that we might have called analytics for a long time. But to understand analytics work, not only in what it looks like inside real organizations, but also, is it something new? Like there's this push around data, but is there something new here? And so I think that, the piece tries to speak to that.
And I think one of the things that it touches on is that exact point, that analytics, the work that these analytics professionals are doing is also asking the other people in the organization to change the way that they may be working with data, or to change the way they approach these relationships. And that's something that people differ in the skill in which they're able to do that. And I think that that's often something that we overlook.
What about you, Brad?
Well, I think to Jeff's point, I would say that there's something very new and something very old. And that's what's attractive about the article. The old piece is that organizations, since the beginning of organizations, have been trying to make sense of their world. So it's always been about sense making. Analytics is new, but it's a new tool for making sense of your world. But at the end of the day, sense making always comes down to individuals and groups. You can't make sense of things really all by yourself, especially in a big complex organization. And I think that's what we really looked at in the article, right? We could get people to chug numbers. Those numbers don't have meaning until someone from the business side brings context to them, or someone from a different area brings their own insight to them. And so I think that that's sort of what's attractive about the article. Jeff used the word technical, and I would agree with that. So much talk about analytics is the technical, functional, statistical part of analytics. And there's not a lot of talk about the human side of analytics, which is actually, to me, that's the last mile. We could spit out a regression analysis. We could do some deep learning on something. But at the end of the day, there's a set of humans that have to figure out, what do we do with this now? And I think that's what we really explored, was the negotiation of those people trying to figure that part of the equation out.
And, Josh, there was... I'm also really fascinated results-wise about the findings related to autonomy here in this paper. And I'm curious because you could talk about how some of them were a bit counterintuitive to what we thought they'd be.
Yeah, the main focus or the outcome, it's a mixed methods paper. So we've got interview data as well as data from our experience of working with these analytics professionals and a survey data that we collected where they reflected on their own experience. And the outcome in our survey data that we were interested in is something we called optioning. Were they able to use their work with data to come up with new ways of thinking about organizational problems, new ways of trying to solve them? And one of the variables that really predicted this was autonomy. Did they have the freedom to ask questions about the data in ways that kind of allowed them to step back from established dogmas, established ways of thinking about problems? And that was one of the main drivers of being able to come up with new ways of looking at the data. And that was a huge takeaway for us as you think about a leader trying to stand up an analytics unit, that it's not just about bringing people in who have those technical skills or even the communicative skills to relate with others around data, but also giving them some degree of autonomy or freedom to look at problems, to tackle difficulties. As I reflect on why I would read the piece if I hadn't written it, it actually comes at the very end of the piece. And this isn't something that was a main focus of our analytical work, but it was a kind of hint that we saw near the end of some of our conversations with these professionals, and that was around the kind of perverse incentives that the hype around analytics has created. We talk at one point in the piece about the money balling of everything from pizza toppings to the library. There seems to be no space where analytics can't solve problems. But in this organization, that created a problem where people wanted to be seen as leaders in the data work. And so it actually made them more likely to hoard data. We thought. We didn't have concrete evidence, but we had hints that this was the case, which speaks to this autonomy piece, right? It's not just about negotiating and solving the problems, the concrete problems of data work. Power is a part of what's going on here. The power to ask questions, but also the power to control data and keep it within certain places within the organization. We hope that you, having heard these reasons, will go and read the piece. You can certainly find it at the Human Relations website, which we'll put on the screen here. And you can also email me directly, and I'm glad to share it with you. You can find me online at the University of Texas at Austin, and my research lab is apronlab.org. Jeff, where can they find you?
They can find me at jeffreytreem.com or on the Moody College of Communication website.
All right. And how about you, Brad? Where can we locate you?
They can find me at availadvisors.com.
Well, happy reading, everyone.